Okay, today we're going to go through a demo of OpenClaw and how I've set that up using a particle tachyon device and a combination of other interfaces and features, including WhatsApp and Cloudflare and database and web server hosted on a Raspberry Pi to try and demonstrate a research agent and how that might work with open access to execute commands on the Tachyon, with the idea being that it could serve up and create web pages and knowledge base articles by itself, doing some research and providing some links back through. I guess to start this off, there's a question as to why is this important and why am I doing it this way. I don't want to use OpenClaw an experiment like this in a corporate environment, so everything I'm doing is an example and in a private network at the moment, so that there's no corporate information included here, but you could see this kind of model being used in maybe a project environment where you've got documentation to produce at the end of a project, and you could capture screenshots and let's say through the process of smoke testing of an interface, you could capture the screenshots and send them through automatically to OpenClaw, who could pull that information together, ask you questions back via Teams rather than WhatsApp, collate that information into a database, and then serve that up at the end of the project as training material that you could hand over to the end users that explains the entire user journey through your application, and automatically updates itself as the configuration changes in the end solution. Just an example of how it could be used, but let's go through exactly what we're going to see. I'll probably pause and speed up the video as we go through. It's not the fastest to process because I'm running it on the Tachyon, but the principle works and it's good to see the end-to-end solution. So I'll try and take you through the journey. So the end user, from an architectural standpoint, sits and interfaces with these three components. So one is a Wiki interface, which is what we're trying to get as an output. So if I show you what that looks like, first of all, so we've got the Wiki here. This is our locally hosted version of Wikipedia. So there's the knowledge base, which is our end goal. So this is where the ideas that I've asked it to research and store, and you can see a variety of different ideas just to see how well it works, are eventually published. So once they've been approved, you can see them here, and they come up at the end of the process with a formed document which includes all of the research that it's done, and outlines its sources, where it's pulled the information from, and version history, but then also the OpenClaw interface, which we're not going to look at too much here. This is just a web interface that's running on the Tachyon server, but so that you can see that it's up and running there. So that's the publicly accessible OpenClaw interface. And then WhatsApp is the other aspect of this. So I've just got a interface here with WhatsApp messaging going backwards and forwards. So OpenClaw is configured to be able to use WhatsApp to communicate with me, which means I can be out and about and interfacing with OpenClaw, which can execute commands from those WhatsApp messages. As it's asking me questions, I can answer them on the move, and then it can continue working, just like if it was a person messaging me from a work perspective. You can see we've got Cloudflare acting as the safety net between the locally hosted Raspberry Pi and Tachyon devices, making them accessible via the internet. And then OpenClaw itself is using OpenAI as its agent background in terms of its brain, and Google search in terms of pulling in the research that it needs for this project. And in the background, Because I don't want OpenClaw to return random results and go off on a tangent all the time, I've given it the wiki instructions, which is what we saw on this page here. So you can see that I've created a series of API helpers that live on the Raspberry Pi. And the schema for that API is published on the wiki itself. So OpenClaw uses this schema to understand what the steps are that it should be performing within the database and how to interface between the Tachyon and the Raspberry Pi to write the steps of the research that it's going to do into the database, which is in turn published via the web server to the wiki interface up here so that you can see it as an end user and interface back. So it's the API helpers that help structure the work that OpenClaw is doing. So it's using the Raspberry Pi and the API helpers as a tool in the process. Okay, so if we pick a new research topic, such as create a new research topic for how to mine Bitcoin. We can send it to it, totally random, so we'll be on the same journey here as to what questions it's going to ask. And then once it's created a topic, we'll be able to see that in the system. So I may need to pause whilst it responds. Okay, so you can see it's added a new research topic, idea 12, how to mine Bitcoin, and that brief includes hardware, pools, wallets, electricity use, heat, noise, profitability, UK electricity costs, etc. So it's thought about it already. The first thing we should be able to see in here, in the knowledge base, if we go to research ideas, we should now see that it's created an entry, how to mine Bitcoin, as of just now, and you can see in the background that WhatsApp's telling that it's created version 12. So the question is, has it got a plan for research? You can see there is no plan as yet, so maybe there are clarifying questions to answer. Okay, it doesn't say so at the moment. You can see these are from a previous idea, still open questions. Okay, so now I've cleared down the legacy questions that were sitting waiting and blocking the workflow. You can see that it's moved on with idea 12, so it's created a completed task. I've stored their backed findings covering what Bitcoin mining actually does, why mining pools are normally used, how network difficulty affect rewards, etc. So first pass conclusions for the article: Bitcoin mining is technically possible for individuals, but profitable home mining in the UK is difficult, etc. So can we see that in the database? So the local research ideas, you can see that that's still at the top. Let's have a look at the plan. So this is the research plan that it's built. This was the task it was given. You can see that that's now complete, that state. You can see all of the different sources that it's used, so government websites, FCA, blockchain, etc. And then the findings that it's got from each source that it wants to use for its article. And then if we've got any clarification questions, they are in here. But for this particular example, there aren't any clarifications. If I show you one that it came up with some like a domestic office, you can see it's come out with the questions in here, and then it captures my answers that I send it via Bitcoin, so you can see via WhatsApp, sorry, so that you can see the answers that I give it coming back in. And also you can see that if you give it an answer that it doesn't understand, like I did here with these measurements, it comes back to say, can you clarify what you meant by that? And then you can tell it in fairly simple terms, height, width, length, and it's like, okay, that's now clear. However, the numbers that you've made up don't make sense for a garden office, and hence it comes back asking for some clarification. So you can see how the flow works and how that might check back and forth from a business perspective if you were building out something like training material. So if I now ask it to draft the article, so you can see it's taken roughly 2 minutes to draft the article. So it's creative cleanup. You can see it's given me a link directly to the article. What it covers says that the status has been published in draft. You can see on the research ideas page that the article I could link to here, status article drafted. But if I open the link here, you'll see it. It takes you into the article that gives you a summary, what the research source was, and then the detail for the article itself. And again, at the bottom, it's going to talk through the sources that it's used to get to its verdict. And then, if I'm happy with that, I can publish the article. So and that will create the final article for the website. So we'll see this change shortly. You can now see that the article is approved and published. So if I refresh here, you'll see that that's moved into an approved state. And you could follow the article link there to see the final product that is ready to go. So you could see how that could be packaged up as an overall site with all of the sub pages and used to document a project, for instance. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. You can see the value of the solution. Have a look at the website for more insight into the other projects that I'm looking into right now.